The next presentation is on resource sharing in Alma. Helen and I are going to do this together. We've called it One to Many, and we haven't made a spelling mistake in that title. Just to go over our bios a little bit, I'm the Manager of Discovery Services and Systems at Macquarie University. I've been at Macquarie now since 2013 when I went to be the Alma Project Manager. Helen and I actually implemented ALIF ILL back in 2008. And in 2016 at Macquarie, we also went live with resource sharing, achieving the goal that I had been not so secretly harbouring since we implemented ALBA in December 2014. Helen has been at Unilink, well, longer than me now, because I'm not there anymore, but she has a depth of knowledge in resource sharing, as she's been involved in configuring, implementing and training circulation and interlibrary loan systems, and is a National Library of Australia accredited trainer for LAD, as well as the Deputy Chair of the Alma Product Working Group. So we're teaming up together today to talk to you about resource sharing. Now I've got to do this as well, just a sec. Thanks, Sue. Just to get started then, the two things that we really want to get across today in our presentation are configuration and collaboration. Okay, so Helen and I are actually planning to present this at Igaloo this year. So there's a little bit of background in it that you guys probably don't need to know about resource sharing in Australia, but it's part of our presentation, and this is our dry run. So bear with us while we go through this. Okay, so firstly, Macquarie University Library. We're located in Sydney, Australia, on a 126-hectare campus on the north side of Sydney Harbour. We have around 40,000 students in the faculties of Arts, Business and Economics, Human Sciences, Medicine and Health Sciences, and Science and Engineering. The university is proud of having one campus and names things accordingly. The university help system is called One Help, our identification is called One ID, and our Wi-Fi is called One Net. You get the picture. Okay. We're also one library. So we're the one in today's topic of one to many. This is the one library. The Macquarie University Library is a single purpose-built building completed in 2011. It's very nice. The building houses the first automated storage and retrieval system in Australia, which contains around 900,000 items of our total physical collection of 1.2 million. We also have electronic access to over 1 million portfolios in Alma, and we currently spend over 90% of our book vote on electronic resources. When I started our Alma migration project in 2013, I had to give a presentation on what was going to happen, and I wasn't allowed to use a PowerPoint. So this is how I was able to show the systems in use in the library before Alma, and I think it was Eve that mentioned molecular diagrams and things yesterday, so it sort of resonated with me. So that was what it was like before, and this is what we were aiming for after Alma. And I actually think we're pretty much there. So the story. Macquarie migrated from Voyager to Alma in December 2014. At that time we were using VDX, the Australian third-party system hosted by OCLC for interlibrary loans. In Australia, libraries use a resource sharing service called Libraries Australia that is coordinated by the National Library of Australia. It's called LAD. LAD provides resource sharing access to approximately 1,200 libraries in Australia and New Zealand. Libraries either use the LAD system directly or have an ISO or NCIP interface to the LAD gateway. The main advantage of this setup is that LAD coordinate the national payment scheme for the bi-monthly billing of requests. VDX was an unintegrated third-party system which was at the end of its life cycle and involved a subscription cost. After implementing ALIF ILL at Unilink with Helen back in 2008, I had high hopes for the Alma resource sharing module as a replacement for VDX at Macquarie. However, in the unique Australian resource sharing landscape, Alma was initially not quite ready. A significant piece of development work was needed to get Alma to interoperate in the way that was required by LAD. And we'd like to thank our colleagues at UniSA for doing the hard yards with the development with Ex Libris, and they were the first Australian library to go live with Alma Resource Sharing and LAD in January 2016. After UniSA, a number of other libraries implemented Alma for resource sharing, Curtin, UWA, Bond and so on. There was a bit of a queue and you had to wait your turn to go through the rigorous testing process that LAD require for the standalone ISO systems. LAD have a script of, I think, about 28 tests that have to be passed before you're allowed to go live. And that's just a sample of some of them. There are currently 13 Alma sites using resource sharing, 7 of these being Unilink sites. The previous libraries to make the switch had followed the procedure imposed on them by LAD, which involved stopping the use of their previous system and using the LAD system as an interim step until all the borrowing and lending transactions on the old system were completed. Requests were done on the LAD system during this interim period, which usually lasted about 3 months, and then after passing all your tests, you could go live with Alma. I didn't want to do it this way. I wanted to go straight onto Alma. The Macquarie staff had been through a period of great change with both the implementation of Alma and a department restructure which involved much training and upskilling. I didn't want to train them in the LAD system to then turn around and train them again in Alma. I wanted them to go straight onto Alma. In April 2016, Macquarie made the decision to implement Alma for resource sharing. We negotiated the time slot we wanted with LAD and Ex Libris and started our configuration and testing and our collaboration. In April 2016, we made... Oh, it's got the same words, I'm sorry. That's our timeline anyway. I'll be referring to the dates on this as I go on. On April the 18th, 2016, we began cleaning up our old VDX transactions where there were a lot of old requests that were long since finished, but we hadn't actually bothered to complete them and close them off and get them off the system. On the 29th of April, we stopped renewals on lending requests so that these transactions could also be closed off quickly in VDX. On 6th of June, we stopped users accessing VDX completely. We started creating resource sharing requests in Primo so that these requests were then starting to be collected in Alma. On the 6th of June, we also suspended Macquarie from the LAD rota so that we would not receive any lending requests. During the next 6 weeks, we monitored the incoming borrowing requests and we purchased items wherever possible. That is actually part of our acquisitions policy anyway, but we kind of went into hyperdrive. Secondly, we delayed as many non-urgent requests as possible. And thirdly, and as the last resort, we placed requests through WorldShare. So thank you to those libraries who happily processed these requests for us via this slightly unorthodox around the world route. Now I want to tell you all why I love my job. Macquarie University has one campus, one library, just the one. After all my years working at Unilink with up to 70 library sites at one point, I think I've died and gone to heaven with just one library. One library is not always what Alma expects. It puts items into transit when they're finished in the cataloguing department upstairs and only need to go on a short lift ride downstairs to their shelf location. However, one library works really nicely in resource sharing. Alma did come to us with the standard separate resource sharing library configured, and so initially we began configuring this. However, we soon realised that the dreaded transit was happening again between our one library and our resource sharing library. So I had to find a better way. Thankfully, one of the resource sharing webinar sessions given by Moshe Schechter mentioned that you could make a regular library into a resource sharing library, so we are still one library. The implications of having only one library are that the pickup locations are all shared by the one library. and also that the temporary resource sharing items that are created are in that one library. That's fine by us, no problems there. The other thing it meant was that we didn't need to populate the resource sharing library in the user's record because they all belong to the same, the one library. Okay. When we started the project to migrate from VDX to Alma, it was only once we were underway that I realised there was a little bit extra happening, a gift with purchase that I wasn't expecting. Our distance users used VDX to request items that were actually held in our library. And here's where the collaboration came in again. With Helen's help and some very fast footwork, we configured a home delivery option for these distance users, created new user groups for our distance staff and students with the appropriate privileges to place the requests on available items and select the home delivery option. This segues nicely into what was probably the most important part of this project, as most projects, communication. This was a project which required communication with the users at each step of the way, before we started, as we began the migration, and once we went live. We used every avenue we could think of: posters, webpage banners, notices on VDX, information sessions, videos, Facebook, Twitter, and good old-fashioned going out and spreading the word. So what are the benefits of Alma resource sharing? Firstly, a single sign-on integrated request process through Primo. Secondly, users can track the progress of their requests in My Library in Primo at every step of the way. You've got a status there. Thirdly, staff benefit from a streamlined, integrated, workflow-driven module. Fourthly, an integrated pick list, which is great when you combine it with the Alma mobile app. From the integrated pick list, as soon as staff pick the item and scan it on the mobile app, the status of the item is shipped. Fifthly, staff love the ease of handling items that we have borrowed from other libraries. No more creating on-the-fly records to loan the item. Alma just does that for you. And lastly, the configuration. We were able to connect our Primo sandbox to our Alma sandbox so that we could test placing requests through Primo. And I'll point out at the time that wasn't the normal way you ran your Alma and Primo sandboxes. So how did it go? Did we make it on time, and is it working? Is it still working? We actually did our lab testing in early July 2016, but we were a week late in implementing Alma resource sharing. We went live on the 8th of August. This was entirely an internal problem with the implementation of those new user groups that we required for our distance users taking that extra week. Is it working? Well, the measure we're using is the number of requests that we're processing. We've now processed over 11,500 requests, that's borrowing plus lending requests, since the 8th of August. Our users, we certainly think our users are not having any problems finding out how to do it and place their requests through Primo. So we think that's pretty good.